Hey everybody, happy Tuesday, as our friends from across the pond would say, and welcome back to the stream. Sorry we were a couple minutes late from our scheduled time. I was figuring out some tech things. Everybody breathe, but we're good. And I'm so happy to be back on the stream with you guys today. If I have a momentary, oh my word, what is going on? I have the worst toothache of my life. I'm pretty sure I have a horrible cavity and I'm immediately going to the dentist first thing tomorrow morning. But your girl's in a lot of pain. So randomly, my tooth hurts really bad. If I have to take some Advil or drink some water, please forgive me in the process. We may or may not be joined by my awesome fiance today to help alleviate the constant pain of talking. To be determined on the show today, but I'm so glad to be live with all of you guys for a very fun topic on the show. As you guys know, if you clicked on the show today, you'll know the title of this is all based on the very now viral commencement address from one of my favorite people right now in the faith content space, who just so happens to also be a Super Bowl champion. Harrison Butker on the Kansas City Chiefs team just gave the commencement address at Benedictine College in Kansas, and it was fire flames. The man went nuclear and said what every single commencement address speaker should have said on stage at graduation ceremonies across the country. So we're going to be reacting to his speech today. We're also going to be talking about an emerging breaking story from this afternoon that a pretty well-known pro-life activist named Lauren Handy has been sentenced to 57 months in federal prison. Whole crazy story going on right there, but we'll get to that. And if I'm feeling a little bit extra spicy, maybe we'll talk about Mary as well, because there's a lot of confusion in my comments section from a video that I posted earlier today on Instagram, and I think we all need to clear some things up. So let me know in the chat if you guys want us to get to that as well, but it's going to be a great stream. Buckle up, let's go. As we're jumping in, please do me a huge favor and smash that follow or subscribe button and let us know who you are and where you're watching from in our chat. While you guys are doing that, want to give a huge thank you to our amazing headline sponsor of the stream today, our friends over at Public Square. If you guys didn't already know, Public Square is America's largest and fastest growing marketplace of almost 100,000 businesses that are all pro-family, pro-faith, and pro-freedom. They are doing a really cool campaign this month called Swap 30, where they're making suggestions for different products you can swap out in your house to be supporting companies that share your values. You can check them all out at publicsquare, all one word, .com. And thank you, Public Square, for making everything possible. In the chat today, is anybody a recent graduate as of this month? I saw the Psycho Bad Boy put in our YouTube chat that you just graduated a few days ago with a degree in mechanical engineering. Congrats, W's in the chat for the Psycho. But anybody else just graduate from college or graduate school or high school? I would be so interested to know. Drop it in the chat. We want to give you a huge, huge shout out. We've got people watching from all over the world today. So cool. Isa is watching from Chile. We've got Louis watching in Ethiopia. Shady is watching and is from Syria. We've got George watching in Tokyo. So cool. My sister is living in Tokyo this summer for an internship, and I'm really jealous because I have always wanted to go. We've got Craig watching in Australia. Renee's watching in Colorado. Jaden says, I just graduated from Auburn. Congrats and War Eagle to you, Jaden. We've got Barbara watching in Sweden. Andrew's watching in Boston. Gabby is graduating from law school on Saturday. Congratulations, Gabby. So very exciting for you. Over on locals, Alex says, I dropped out. Peace signs. We love to see it, Alex. Based AF. Red says, I just applied for a degree at Vanderbilt. So exciting. Best of luck to you. We've got John Best watching. My fiance is coming in to talk with us on the stream today, apparently, so we will make some adjustments. John Best is tuning in over on Rumble, as is Tynes. And finally, over on YouTube, we've got Peter, Steven, we've got All-Star Mama, we've got Barak watching in Croatia, and more. You guys, I love you so much. Part of the reason we had tech issues, hang on Instagram, we will make this work for you, is that my fiance is like, do you want me to stream with you? And he never says that. and I was not quite ready to have 2 people on the show today. So we're gonna just make this work. Sorry, Instagram, we're having a minor aneurysm in what we want all of this to look like. Scooch in, Brucky, so that everybody can see your beautiful face. For those that don't know, this handsome, tall glass of water is my cutie fiance. Brock, say hi, introduce yourself. I only have this one mic plugged in because you sprung it on me that we were going to be double streaming, but that's a-okay. Who are you?
Well, she makes it seem like it was just oh my gosh, I want to do it. She asked me almost every day if I want to stream with her, and I always say no. I am not the on-camera personality in the family. And finally today, I gave in and was like, okay, I'll do it today.
That is such a misrepresentation. This man just has a deep love for the subjects that we are talking about today and wanted to go off a little bit on the stream. So he said, can I stream with you? And I said, yes, of course, you sure can. We're going to get into all of it starting now. So as I mentioned, this stream is specifically focused first and foremost on the nuclear bomb Harrison Butker just dropped on academia everywhere with his commencement address. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see it yet. Obviously, it's a really long speech, so we cut up the speech into a couple of different portions that I would love to react to with you. But first of all, can I just say we need a whole lot more people like Harrison Butker in the world. Like, this man is so unapologetic about his values. He's so unapologetic about what his real vocation is in life, and it's not to be a Super Bowl champion multiple times over, although that's a nice little feather in his cap on top of everything else, but it's to just bring people to God and tell the truth to the world and constantly defend the things that he believes in. I am not a Chiefs fan. In fact, I really cannot stand the Chiefs, if we're being totally honest with ourselves. I am through and through a Denver Broncos fanatic, and I always will be, even though we've been the donkeys for a long time. But it's been really fun to watch Harrison Butker just totally thrive and bring so many people to truth over the last couple of years. And this week he was asked to be the commencement speaker at a very cool university called Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas. If you've never heard of Benedictine, it probably means you're not Catholic, but it is a teeny tiny Catholic university in a very rural town in Kansas. I've been on their campus once. My grandfather actually went to Benedictine for a little while, way back in the day. Yeah. And I've had many friends go to Benedictine and absolutely loved it. The one time that I was on their campus giving a speech, I think it was for Turning Point USA, I fell in love with their students. They are just the most amazing people. And I thought that this image of Harrison's speech that he gave as the commencement address was such a fascinating mirror to what else was happening on college campuses this week. Like, I don't know if you guys have been seeing a whole lot of the insanity, but we'll watch his speech first and then compare that to what happened, let's say, at Columbia or Duke this week. And then ask yourself, especially if you are a college student and or a parent of college students, which type of environment would you rather be learning in? I hope that the answer is pretty clear for all of you guys. Buckle up, get out your notepad. This man has some truth bombs to share.
Not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally.
Can we just start there? So in the middle of his speech, he just starts going nuclear and is like, hey, so heads up, our president thinks that he's Catholic. He's not. Or at least he's a really bad Catholic. And he has the audacity to make the sign of the cross during an abortion rally, which happened here in Florida just a couple of weeks ago. He has the audacity to support policies like surrogacy and IVF and abortion at large, none of which are actually good for people, nor follow Catholic social teaching. And honestly, maybe I'm just missing this, Brock, but is this not like the first time a mainstream celebrity / athlete has called him out on this? Not like outside of the political world. I think it is. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I think it is.
Maybe like it to this degree, probably. I'm sure there have been athletes that have called him out. You don't follow Antonio Brown on Twitter, but like not to this. Antonio Brown isn't as eloquently putting it as Harrison Butker is. He just tweets, "Joe Biden sucks," and a Photoshop picture of him and Trump, and he's like, we can take the country back. But yeah, this is. Do you remember when he went to the White House? So did you remember this story? So the Chiefs, anybody who doesn't know, obviously the Chiefs have won back-to-back Super Bowls, and then they also won one like 4 or 5 years ago. He's been the kicker on all their Super Bowl teams recent in history, but he wore it was his tie, right? It was his, he wore it to the White House. What was his, it was like a. It was all the babies, right? It was like little fetuses. It was like a pro-life tie.
It was the button, wasn't it, of little baby feet?
Yes, but I think his tie was that way too. Now, I've seen a lot of people protest the other way at the White House where they just like don't go. They're like, I'm not going to go at all because I don't support who the person in the office is. I think that is a much better way of doing it. Go and literally protest in a nice way. Like he showed up, he wore a suit to honor the Chiefs or whatever at the White House, but he was protesting Joe Biden right in front of his face, which I thought was great in like an eloquent way. But now when you have an open platform like this, people talk about bravery.
Yeah.
Like this is like putting that on a literal podium, not to be coy, but like he has everything to lose and nothing to gain. So like there is nothing for him that is going to come out of this that could be good, except he just wants to do it out of the courage of his own heart.
My dear friend just texted me because he's watching. The tie said, "Protect the vulnerable" in Latin. That's what it said at the White House. Okay, we got to keep watching because it's just so good. You think that was good? Just wait. So he calls Joe Biden out for being a fake Catholic and basically says it is completely unacceptable if you claim to have a position of moral authority in society to support abortion, to support surrogacy, to support IVF, etc.
He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic.
Oh, yes! Like, who else is calling people out like this? Nobody. And he's not doing it in like a mean way or a bullying way or a slanderous way. He's saying the world has a fundamentally distorted view of Catholicism because people like Joe Biden and all of these other people pushing gender theology, which I call it theology for a reason, by the way. It really has replaced religion for a lot of these people. On children are doing it under the guise of Catholicism, a la Nancy Pelosi. And I don't see a lot of people calling them out, not in a bad way or a heretical way, but in an honest way. Like, this is not what Catholicism looks like as he's giving this address at a Catholic school. So based.
Important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice.
Oh, this in another life, Harrison Butker would have been a theologian, like a full-time theologian. That was so good. The Church of Nice can't keep operating and never mistake compassion for cowardice. I feel like I'm like at church right now. Get this man an opportunity to do more of this.
It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it. As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Don't be mistaken, even within the church, people in polite Catholic circles will try to persuade you to remain silent. The chaos of the world is unfortunately reflected in the chaos in our parishes. And sadly,
honestly, I love that he said that because that reflects a lot of what my experience was like on my college campus. I often don't talk about this because I'm worried it's going to upset people to bring it up. But as you guys know, it's no secret. I wrote my first book about it. I was heavily involved in political activism on my college campus. I started multiple clubs for this. I gained quite the reputation of being that conservative girl. And I never felt like that diminished my relationship with God. I just felt like that was the lane that I was called to go run in on my college campus, to bring people to God's truth in a bit of a different way than just like doing 8 Bible studies a week and having every single meal at the church. And I often got a lot of criticism and ridicule for that at the time from some members of our parish community and members of the young Catholic group on campus, because it wasn't like enough Christianity. Like, you were almost a bad Christian if you didn't go to every meal at the church that was offered, if you didn't go to every single retreat, if you didn't blah, 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 blah. And especially if you went out of your way to be involved in secular issues, even though they were issues that were tied to our faith, stuff like gender identity and abortion and all of these things that I was constantly fighting against on campus. And so I love that he said that there's even going to be right now backlash inside of your community and inside of your parishes and inside of the church as a discouragement to get you not to talk about these things. But that's precisely why we need more and more people to talk about them now more than ever. I really love that. Yeah. Ugh, so good. Keep going.
Our cathedrals too. As we saw during the pandemic, too many bishops were not leaders at all. They were motivated by fear of being sued, fear of being removed, fear of being disliked. They showed by their actions, intentional or unintentional, that the sacraments don't actually matter. Because of this, countless people died alone without access to the sacraments, and it's a tragedy we must never forget. As Catholics,
who's saying that right now? Anybody? No, we just forgot about it. Did you know anybody who died during the pandemic? I did, and it was awful. I knew somebody who died on Good Friday during the pandemic, and it was so early on in COVID. They died from a super rare autoimmune disease, and it shows up as lung failure in middle-aged men. And so they immediately, because everybody who had breathing issues and respiratory issues was struggling with COVID at the time, they immediately jumped to, this is COVID, this is COVID, this is COVID. They gave him like 8 different tests. It was never COVID, but they kept trying to say that it was because your hospital would get a grant if the person had COVID, whatever. They literally, I'm not even exaggerating, refused to let his entire family come say goodbye to him when he died, the day that they unplugged him from all of his machines, because it wasn't safe enough to have that many people in the hospital. So only his wife and one of his 3 children was able to go, and everybody else had to say goodbye to him on Skype. And they couldn't have a funeral, they couldn't have anything. Like, that's what these people took away from everybody. And we're all just supposed to forget that that happened? What a traumatic, horrible experience. And especially, can you maybe not lick the microphone? Thank you. Especially from a religious standpoint, when people are literally on their deathbed and bishops were telling priests, you cannot go to hospitals to administer last rites to people. You can't go anoint the sick. It's not safe, it's not safe, it's not safe. They were motivated by fear. That was so well said.
we can look to so many examples of heroic shepherds who gave their lives for their people, and ultimately, the church. We cannot buy into the lie that the things we experienced during COVID were appropriate. Over the centuries, there have been great wars, great famines, and yes, even great diseases, all that came with a level of lethality and danger. But in each of those examples, church leaders leaned into their vocations and ensured that their people received the sacraments. Great saints like St. Damien of Malachi, who knew the dangers of his ministry, stayed for 11 years as a spiritual leader to the leper colonies of Hawaii. His heroism is looked at today as something set apart and unique, when ideally it should not be unique at all. For as a father loves his child, so a shepherd should love his spiritual children too. That goes even more so for our bishops, these men who are present-day apostles. Our bishops once had adoring crowds of people kissing their rings and taking in their every word, but now relegate themselves to a position of inconsequential existence. Now, when a bishop of a diocese or the bishops' conference as a whole puts out an important document on this matter or that, nobody even takes a moment to read it, let alone follow it. No. Today, our shepherds are far more concerned with keeping the doors open to the chancery than they are with saying the difficult stuff out loud. It seems that the only time you hear from your bishops is when it's time for the annual appeal, whereas we need our bishops to be vocal about the teachings of the church, setting aside their own personal comfort and embracing their cross. Our bishops are not politicians, but shepherds. So instead of fitting in the world by going along to get along, they too need to stay in their lane and lead. I say all of this not from a place of anger, as we get the leaders we deserve. But this does make me reflect on staying in my lane and focusing on my own vocation and how I can be a better father and husband and live in the world, but not be of it.
Oh, so well said. And I don't feel any anger or frustration or judgment or any negativity in any of the things that he's saying. I think he's just trying to grab the modern American church by the shoulders and shake us a little bit that we need to come back to life. And for so many people in a post-COVID sense, like he was saying, it really still hasn't happened. We live in a very conservative area relatively of the church. They always stayed open. They give really great based homilies on Sunday. But even in Miami, the Archbishop doesn't want the bread and the wine on Sundays. They'll only do the body of Christ, not the blood of Christ, still because germs and COVID. At my parents' parish in Evergreen, Colorado, they call it the Mass of the Living Dead because they've brought back nothing. There's no breakfasts or community gatherings. There's still social distancing at church. It's the weirdest freaking thing. And the few times that we've been, I'm like, this is not the church I grew up going to. It's actually really sad. Really sad. But I don't think that he's angry about it or judgmental.
No, I think he's being very...
You gotta...
I have to talk into the microphone, everybody.
Sorry. You guys squish
Ah. Sorry, the content creation life is not in my...
You asked to stream.
No, I think he's doing exactly... He's behaving how a rational person who is kind of fed up and is dealing with it the right way. Because you can be fed up and deal with it the wrong way, if that makes sense, by either just leaving your life behind and saying, nobody's sticking up for anything anymore, I'm just going to be done with it. Or you could kind of radicalize and do the crazy thing of going overboard and doing the whole freak out thing. I think this is how you properly do it.
Yeah.
You get in front of a mic with a platform while living your life and you say, these are the people who we're entrusting to do X, Y, Z. They're not doing it. And he's being fair to the nth degree because he's calling out his own community in the church, saying the bishops in my church that I attend are doing X, Y, Z. The country that I live in is doing X, Y, Z. And so he's not just calling out the people that he would disagree with. He's calling out the people on his side of the aisle and the other side of the aisle, saying neither one of you are doing anything correctly. So what do we as Christians need to fundamentally do to change this behavior / what should we be doing? This is how you should live your life. I love the sentence, be in the world, not of the world. Great.
Focusing on my vocation while praying and fasting for these men will do more for the church than me complaining about her leaders. Because there seems to be so much confusion coming from our leaders, there needs to be concrete examples for people to look to in places like Benedictine, a little Kansas college built high on a bluff above the Missouri River, are showing the world how an ordered, Christ-centered existence is the recipe for success. Being locked in with your vocation and staying in your lane is going to be the surest way for you to find true happiness and peace in this life. It is essential that we focus on our own state in life, whether that be as a layperson, a priest, or religious. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives. Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourselves and this era of human existence. In the small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you.
This is the best part of the speech, by the way. I've watched this clip maybe 20 times, and I get something new out of it every single time. He spends a portion of his commencement address specifically addressing the young women in the crowd graduating from Benedictine College about the plethora of lies confronting women today in our postmodern society. And I'm glad that he does that, because I've said I don't know how many times in the last couple of months that the attack on manhood and masculinity that we've seen in America over the last several decades, really throughout our entire lifetime, has been so successful that it's almost like non-existent now. They don't really continue that fight from radical secular leftism anymore. They've successfully, in their minds, erased anything associated with toxic masculinity or manhood, even though we know that it's swinging back, largely thanks to really positive influences like Jordan Peterson. But they're like upping the ante and totally rewriting the playbook to the nth degree on how they can do the same to attack womanhood. And instead of just labeling everything as toxic or mean or evil and outdated, now they are just trying to erase the very concept of womanhood entirely and gaslight women into thinking all of these beautiful things that are good for you, that you were designed for, like marriage and motherhood, are actually bad for you and are going to ruin your life. I love what Harrison has to say about this.
How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
I'm gonna cry.
I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say
Great
that
name.
her
There's a lot of great Isabels out there. Shout out. Queen, yes.
life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, Homemaker.
Are you crying? I'm gonna cry. That's so beautiful. Like, that is the most important title that you can possibly have, is what goes on at home. And I actually read something the other day. I'd be really curious to get your thoughts on this, Brock. That, I think I screenshotted it because it was so good, and I can't remember. It was a quote from C.S. Lewis, and I don't want to butcher it. Here it is. It's a quote from C.S. Lewis. The homemaker has the ultimate career. All other careers exist for one purpose only, and that is to support the ultimate career. Like, everything you do, even as a working mom outside of your house, is ultimately to support the home and the family that you're building, the domestic church that you are responsible with growing. And I just thought that was so profound the other day, and then that tied into this speech. I think that's exactly what women need to hear right now. Ironically, from a man, but from anyone who's willing to tell them that.
Well, it probably makes more of an impact coming from a man, because I think girls, at least in today's society, you either get one or the other, right? You either have the girl boss mentality,
Yeah.
or you get the girls that are like, yeah, trad wife, stay at home, don't work, live your, raise your kids, do the homemaker thing. And I think for girls, it has become such like a, I don't know, I feel like, I could be wrong, but I'm just theorizing from my perspective, is that like, it probably has, but girls have become so numb to that like, you either have to pick a lane, one or the other. But when you hear it from a guy with a little bit of unique perspective, that I think a lot of girls probably hear guys on the internet and they get the weird red pill guy space that's like, you should have sex with as many women as possible.
Marriage
Don't
is a trap.
don't get married. All the women just want to take your money and take half your stuff. Hearing an actual guy get up and be like, I do what I do because of my wife, not because of who I am. I've been gifted the ability to do what I do because I have the perfect person at home raising our family, doing the homemaker thing, is the only reason I can do what I do and why I do what I do. And I think that kind of attitude will lessen the ability. The girls that are going to be the trad wives are already there, right? You don't have to convince them. The girls that are the girl bosses that kind of in their heart are going to naturally be pulled to do the nurturing thing, they look down upon it. They're like, I don't want people to look down on me for choosing to do this. Like, I have to, like the hustle culture thing, I got to get out there and got to do that. For someone to tell you, like, hey, look, hustle culture's fine, but, like, this is more important. What do you ultimately do hustle culture for? She sees herself. What do you do hustle culture for? Is to take care of your home.
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
She's right. It's the homemaker thing.
Oh, love that. Okay, there's a few more minutes. And he's crying. He just loves her so much. It's so sweet.
She's the primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She is the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences like this one today, I pray that I always use my voice for God and not for myself. Everything I am saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, but rather a place of experience. I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal. Heterodox ideas abound even within Catholic circles, for let's be honest, there is nothing good about playing God with having children, whether that be your ideal number or the perfect time to conceive. No matter how you spin it, there is nothing natural about Catholic birth control. It is only in the past few years that I have grown encouraged to speak more boldly and directly, because as I mentioned earlier, I have leaned into my vocation as a husband and father, and as a man. To the gentlemen here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well.
Who, even in American politics and culture at large, is really talking from a man's perspective about absentee father rates in America? Like 5 people?
Yeah.
I can think of like 5 people.
Literally Byron Donalds and Vivek. That's all I can think of.
Well, and then in the commentator world, Charlie and Brandon Tatum and Jordan Peterson.
wasn't even
That's
in the
5 people.
commentator world. Yeah.
Maybe a few more. Less than 10, easily. And then we got ultimate alpha male Harrison Butker over here talking about absentee fathers at a college commencement ceremony. That is epic to me. How cool.
Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better. I speak from experience as an introvert who now finds myself as an amateur public speaker and an entrepreneur, something I never thought I'd be when I received my industrial engineering degree. The road ahead is bright. Things are changing, society is shifting, and people, young and old, are embracing tradition. Not only has it been my vocation that has helped me and those closest to me, but not surprising to many of you, should be my outspoken embrace of the traditional Latin Mass. I've been very vocal in my love and devotion to the TLM and its necessity for our lives. But what I think gets misunderstood is that people who attend the TLM do so out of pride or preference. I can speak to my own experience, but for most people I have come across within these communities, this simply
What'd you just
I
say?
said, he might be my new spirit animal.
is not true. I do not attend the TLM because I think I am better than others or for the smells and bells or even for the love of Latin. I attend the TLM because I believe just as the God of the Old Testament was pretty particular in how he wanted to be worshiped, the same holds true for us today. It is through the TLM that I encountered order and began to pursue it in my own life. Aside from the TLM itself, too many of our sacred traditions have been relegated to things of the past, when in my parish, things such as Ember Days, days when we fast and pray for vocations and for our priests, are still adhered to. The TLM is so essential that I would challenge each of you to pick a place to move where it is readily available. A lot of people have complaints about the parish or the community, but we should not sacrifice the Mass for community. I prioritize the TLM even if the parish isn't beautiful, the priest isn't great, or the community isn't amazing. I still go to the TLM because I believe the holy sacrifice of the Mass is more important than anything else. I say this knowing full well that when each of you rekindle your knowledge and adherence to many of the Church's greatest traditions, you will see how much more colorful and alive your life can and should be. As you move on from this place and enter into the world, know that you will face many challenges. Sadly, I'm sure many of you know of the countless stories of good and active members of this community who, after graduation and moving away from the Benedictine bubble, have ended up moving in with their boyfriend or girlfriend prior to marriage. Some even leave the church and abandon God. It is always heartbreaking to hear these stories, and there is a desire to know what happened and what went wrong. What you must remember is that life is about doing the small things well, setting yourself up for success, and surrounding yourself with people who continually push you to be the best version of you. I say this all the time, that iron sharpens iron. It's a great reminder that those closest to us should be making us better. If you are dating someone who doesn't even share your faith, how do you expect that person to help you become a saint? If your friend group is filled with people who only think about what you're doing next weekend and are not willing to have those difficult conversations, how can they help sharpen you? As you prepare to enter into the workforce, it is extremely important that you actually think about the places you are moving to. Who is the bishop? What kind of parishes are there? Do they offer the TLM and have priests who embrace their priestly vocation? Cost of living must not be the only arbiter of your choices, for a life without God is not a life at all, and the cost of salvation is worth more than any career. I'm excited for the future, and I pray that something I have said will resonate as you move on to the next chapter of your life. Never be afraid to profess the one holy, Catholic, and Apostolic Church, for this is the church that Jesus Christ established, through which we receive sanctifying grace. I know that my message today had a little less fluff than is expected for these speeches, but I believe that this audience and this venue is the best place to speak openly and honestly about who we are and where we all want to go, which is heaven. I thank God for Benedictine College and for the example it provides to the world. I thank God for men like President Minnis who are doing their part for the kingdom. Come to find out, you can have an authentically Catholic college and a thriving football program. Make no mistake, you are entering into mission territory in a post-God world, but you were made for this, and with God by your side and a constant striving for virtue within your vocation, you too can be a saint. Christ is King to the heights.
W's in the freaking chat for my new favorite person of all freaking time, Harrison Butker. My goodness. I wish that had been I don't even remember the commencement speech at my graduation at all. Certainly is not what most of the kids in this country are hearing this week with just follow the woke mob. Oh, here was a fun one. When we went to my sister's college graduation at my same university a few years after I graduated, you had been dating me for a little less than a year maybe at that point. Was that? And Brock shows up. And he went to a really small school in South Carolina. I went to a really big school in Colorado. And they started the whole graduation ceremony with a land grant acknowledgement. I don't know if you've ever heard of a land acknowledgement, but basically you have a bunch of white people up on a stage fake crying the crocodile tears that we stole this land from a bunch of Native American tribes, and here's who we stole it from. Brock looked at me and started audibly laughing, and I had to smack him because it was my sister's graduation. You can't be, interrupting the whole ceremony.
It might have been the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, it was that bad. I mean, like, I think is that the first time I met your family in full? Like, everybody?
No.
All of them together? I don't know.
No, it was before that.
But I'm in this big family thing with Isabel's family and some family friends and a bunch of people. And obviously, you guys know a lot about Isabel's life and mine. We are very outspoken people. Isabel and I are not quiet. We're not going to sheepishly sit down. Like, we will out loud audibly say things when people are being dumb or like, and this, like, it was 4 white people get up there and they're like, everybody stood up, and I think we were doing the national anthem to start something like normal, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. And they just go, please remain standing for the land grant acknowledgement thing. And I like immediately looked at Isabel and I was like, what are we doing? And they were like, we want to say we are on stolen land and we are operating this graduation on, like,
Sacred.
I don't know what Indian tribe they even named, but it was the most, and I started laughing, like, and a bunch of people started looking around at me because I was like, are we really doing this? This is so dumb.
That was a good memory. My mom gave you the dirtiest look, like, Brock, shut up. But that's what a normal graduation looks like, not this completely based pathway for life. Like, that's what I really love about this commencement speech, is it does what a commencement speech is supposed to do. It's supposed to send graduates into their next phase of life with the instructions on how to live a beautiful, service-oriented, productive life in society. And what are the best ways to do that? Men, embrace your masculinity. Don't shy away from who God created you to be. Set the tone for culture. Men are responsible for setting the tone for culture. I loved that. And women, there is no better job title you are ever going to have than being a wife and a mom. And what other college in the United States of America is going to tell you that today? Very, very few. So I think I know where we're going to send our kids to college someday. I'd be very happy to pay for Benedictine at this point.
He did a great job of hitting all of the talking points in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys have ever been to a college lecture or a college graduation anytime soon. They're very long. They're very boring. And they're like, oh my gosh, I want to blow my brains out. Was yours inside or outside? Inside. Mine was outside. So it was hot as all get out. In like May in South Carolina. Like, it was really hot. And the worst thing you want is like a 3-hour, 4-hour graduation ceremony. Like, that is the worst. He hit all of those points in, I don't know if you edited that. Did you edit that down at all?
Yeah, slightly, but only by like 3 minutes.
So it may have been 20 minutes because that was like, well, what, less than 15? So if you push 5 at the max, like a 20-minute speech, a banger speech that we can all be like, that might go down as the greatest graduation speech of all time.
Easily. Harrison, we love you. I might have to be 5% a Chiefs fan, only because of you, which I already am. When we were watching the Super Bowl, I was like, that's my guy the whole time, even though I hate the Chiefs. So let's just put that on the record. But we love the Chiefs owners. I love Patrick Mahomes. I love Harrison Butker. The Denver Broncos child in me is really struggling to cheer for the Chiefs. My extended family in Kansas will all love to hear that I'm somewhat cheering for that team. But I just want to say that speech also made me appreciate the need to be proudly outspoken about your faith. You know, like, obviously he's tailoring this to a Catholic, very small Catholic, pretty traditionally Catholic university. But he said a line in there about the President of the United States right at the beginning. And I don't know if it stuck with you guys or not, but it has stuck with me every time I've rewatched these clips. It's not enough to just be Catholic. Like, it's not enough to just call yourself something. It's not enough to just believe in something in the privacy and quiet of your own home. If you really are professing what you're believing, and if you're really putting your money where your mouth is, you have to go out into the world and use those values to transform the world for the better. We have to be speaking out against practices like abortion. We have to be speaking out against gender identity nonsense. We have to be speaking out against IVF and surrogacy and all of these things that have become mainstream and normalized in our society. But it's not enough to just privately disagree with them at home and keep it to yourself. If you really want to make the world a better place, if you really want to be on a path to sainthood, if you really want to bring other people along that path with you, you have to speak up and say something about it. And I just got chills from that entire situation. Chat, what did you guys think? Best graduation speech of all time? David Flores says Harrison Butker 2020. This man would be a better candidate for president than anybody in modern history, so I would be very, very happy about it. What else do you guys think? Larissa says, I totally agreed. Mando says, we have got to take action. Brian, shout out. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. We're having like entire theological debates in the YouTube chat right now. So we're not going to get into all of that. But Leg Day says, solid speech. Omnifist Production says, be a strong man, not a weak he, him. Well said. What a good takeaway from that speech. Love. Freaking love Harrison Butker. Shout out, you're amazing. We are praying for you. Before we get into what Brock really wanted to talk about today is an impromptu, fun little conversation, I just want to update you guys. Sure, take the beast. Goodbye. I want to update you guys on an emerging news story that is happening this afternoon. Before I even get into any of that, I just wanted to compare what was happening at Benedictine with this particular commencement speech and everywhere else across the country. And I just want you to think about the comparison between secular universities and this type of learning environment for yourself or for your kids at this point in time, because it's really ugly. And of course, now it's not going to let me show it to you because we've lost the clip. Here we go. This is Columbia. Turn off our music. This is Columbia University, where this student has just graduated with her master's in social work. So, for the record, your master's degree is wildly expensive, 2 years of tuition. At Columbia, the tuition is $90,000 a year. So either this girl or her parents, presumably probably her parents, have paid $180,000 for this girl to get her master's in social work, walk across the stage, and rip up her diploma.
She's handcuffed too.
And she's handcuffed above her head. And this is all supposed to be in protest for Palestine, wearing her keffiyeh over her graduation robe. And I can't see what her cap says, but presumably it's like a free Palestine slogan. That's what commencement addresses look like at Columbia right now, while these students scream and whine and rip up their diplomas in protest for Palestine. And by the way, in about 5 minutes, this is going to be the girl complaining that we need to relieve all of her student debt. So just be prepared for all of that, which is great. And meanwhile,
I'm actually the director of activism of the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. We're a group of leftists who are...
I'm ahead of myself. Over at Duke University, the commencement speaker was Jerry Seinfeld. I would give anything to watch that speech in person, by the way, because I love Jerry Seinfeld. One of our favorite movies of all time is the Bee Movie, and literally probably 25 times a day I look at Brock and go, you like jazz? Because it's just the best movie of all time. But there was a massive student walkout at Duke University's commencement as Jerry Seinfeld started to go up on stage to give his commencement address, which, by the way, had nothing to do with Israel. Nothing. It was just the fact that he was Jewish. That's why everybody was mad. There was this mass walkout, and this is what it looked like.
So, what's the big deal about commencement speaker?
You're right. Most of them are still sitting. But it's enough
Aside from the fact that we're perhaps all wondering whether he's wearing a
They should not let these kids graduate. You heard it from Brock first. Can we talk about here? I'm gonna put the dog down. Go away, Libby. We love you, but your limelight moment is over. Go.
The girl that tore up her diploma from Columbia, there's a lot of words I could use to describe that person that I won't. But what I will say is that girl proved in the 2-second clip from her grabbing her diploma to then after that of proving why college is a scam. Because you're up there to get a piece of paper. Whether she knew it or not, she literally just proved to everybody that that is a scam. Because she tore up her degree that she spent thousands and thousands of dollars to go get. That little piece of paper that comes in an envelope to show the world somehow that you're technically qualified to do any sort of job, which I don't know what a master's in social work gets you. The ability to talk to kids, I guess. Like, what does a social worker even do?
A whole lot.
Yeah, okay.
The foster care system, adoption agencies, there's a lot.
Well, do you want that person in the adoption care center? No. But I was more talking about the tearing up of the degree goes to prove that like it is indeed a scam, because that's what you go there for, and you're willing to tear it up over a fictional country that has never existed, that's in the middle of a war. But side note, that's just, don't send your kids to school unless it's Benedictine, clearly. As we know, then you can send them to school.
So we will not be sending our children to any prestigious university at this point. Brock actually worked at Duke for a little while in college for the basketball team.
That was my favorite school on earth.
That was his dream school, and now that type of behavior is completely encouraged and applauded by a whole lot of people. Columbia is an absolute disaster, and I predict they will go bankrupt within the next several months, so to be determined on that. But I am just so encouraged to see people use opportunities to tell the truth in our world in whatever sphere of influence that they can, and that commencement speech by Harrison Butker might go down as my favorite speech in the last several years, maybe ever. It was so freaking good. We're going to transition gears here a bit, and I want to update you guys on some breaking news that's happening this afternoon. If you've been following the story of the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising Group, or PAU, P-A-A-U, you'll know that there were several activists in the last several months that have been facing a gigantic mountain of legal battles because they non-violently protested in front of an abortion clinic facility in Washington, D.C. It was kind of up for debate, but basically blocked the entrance of an abortion facility, which there is a specific federal law that is surrounding abortion facilities in particular to criminalize pro-life protests outside of buildings. Notice how you don't see any of these students really being sent to prison, or any of these professors being sent to prison for blocking the entrance and blockading buildings on federally funded college campuses, but you are seeing the justice system take massive action against people standing in front of the door at an abortion facility. If you remember seeing anything on social media over the last couple of years about a campaign called Justice for the Five, graphic warning, there was a group of pro-life activists that discovered at an abortion facility in Washington, D.C., 5 bodies of children who very clearly had been born alive. They were not completely dismembered like most children who are aborted are, but were experimented upon and had all kinds of violent, horrible things happen to them after they were very clearly killed outside of the womb. They were born and then experimented upon, and all of these horrible things were happening. So basically it gets uncovered that at this particular abortion facility in Washington, D.C., they were allowing these children to be born fully alive and killing them after the fact in really grotesque and brutal ways. So this group of people that organized a nonprofit called the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising, PAU, who I'll show you a clip of here in just a second, decided to go protest out in front of it. They essentially blocked the door of this building and were standing outside handing out rosaries and resources for women who might want an alternative and might not know that there is an option for themselves to choose life. There is a massive developing aspect of this story this afternoon as we speak, but the director of this organization is a very, very beautiful, kind, incredible soul named Lauren Handy, who is 30 years old. I met Lauren at the March for Life in January of 2023 on the steps of the Supreme Court of the United States. I interviewed her and posted a video way back then, January of last year, and just reposted that video with a slight update today on my Instagram. But I want you to hear directly from Lauren about what she believes in, what their organization is trying to do, and know that I disagree with her on pretty much everything politically under the sun, but that's not the point, right? And her message to people is that we need to be fighting now more than ever
of the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. We're a group of leftists who are against abortion through the lens of anti-capitalism. We're comprised of communists, Marxists, socialists, Democrats, social liberalism, and we believe changing the material conditions that cause unexpected or crisis pregnancies can reduce abortion. I'm a full-time sidewalk counselor. A sidewalk counselor is a person who stands in front of abortion businesses and offers resources to pregnant people who go inside. And I've helped over 800 families choose life across the country.
800 families. At least 800 children have been born that she knows of. There could be a whole lot more, because she has dedicated her entire career to standing outside on the sidewalk and handing people resources and rosaries and talking to people about their options.
Had people coming in who were going in for abortions, and they believed it was either murder, wrong, or they didn't want it. And so I thought to myself, why are people, if we're here to just change hearts and minds, and that's good, I'm not saying that's not good, but here are people who think it's wrong and are still getting abortions. Why?
We live in a society today that is very argumentative, that being pro-life is a partisan issue. Smashing that narrative a bit, doing what you do, what message do you have for people?
We believe in radical solidarity, and we believe in uniting with anybody who shares the common goal of ending abortion in all 50 states, because it's going to take all of us. That radical sense of solidarity and unity is what's going to end abortion.
That radical sense of solidarity and unity is what is going to end abortion. That is Lauren Handy, 30-year-old director of PAU, the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. Clearly, Lauren and I disagree on a whole lot politically, and I think it's okay to say that. But I have long admired Lauren for her ability to separate what most people in America today view as a partisan issue, and instead look at abortion for what it really is, which is the greatest human rights issue of our time. It is a literal genocide that is happening for millions of people every single day. I know we love throwing that word around right now, genocide, but that's exactly what it is with the abortion industry. Lauren was one of those people who stood out in front of the door of this abortion facility in Washington, D.C. She was arrested. She's been facing legal trials for months and months and months at this point. Her crime, just to be clear, is handing out resources to women who are wanting a potential alternative and not wanting to end the life of her child. This is her full-time job. I have been sidewalk counseling many, many times. It's a really moving experience, and often it really does save a life, sometimes up to 800 lives, like in the case of Lauren's career. Today, Lauren was sentenced to 57 months in federal prison for leading this protest. 57 months. After her prison term, she has to serve 3 years of supervised release, during which she is prohibited from entering or coming within 1,000 feet of any abortion clinic in the country. I don't care if you consider yourself to be pro-life or pro-abortion, or you think that you might not care about this issue. I don't care if you're a woman or a man or progressive or conservative or anything in between politically. This case is easily the biggest miscarriage of justice I have seen in our new two-tiered justice system in modern history. Like, as we speak this week, there are people calling for terrorism with known terrorist organizations on American college campuses. There are people smashing windows of public buildings, lighting things on fire, creating blockades, destroying public and private property, who have been arrested, but then like 5 seconds later, okay, bye, it was nice to see you, add that to your protest rap sheet. But for someone who was willing to just tell the truth, who was willing to put herself in a position to save someone else's life, she is now going to spend 57 months in federal prison. And after that, can't continue the work that she's doing in fighting to save lives. That's disgusting. That's disgusting, and is actually a massive slap in the face to the First Amendment. Like, how can you honestly say that we live in a free country and then tell people you can't go stand on a public sidewalk, even if you are within 1,000 feet of an abortion facility, and you can't say what you want, or you can't pray, or you can't hand people truthful resources?
How would you even enforce that?
I don't know.
Like, I don't know how you could enforce that. Because, like, hey, who knows how many abortion clinics there are? There's probably one on every other street corner. I would really want to look into the case and see what they arrested her specifically for. Because they didn't just arrest her for handing out stuff. It can't be.
Well, I can tell you.
And they wouldn't be, it was clearly because she was blocking the entrance, or like they had whatever the specifics around it were. That's what I would want to like lean into, like the more, because I can disagree with it all I want. I would want to know the uber specifics of the case, what they were actually trying her for. I would assume it's like blocking a private business from like operating.
It's a specific law. It's called, sorry, I only have one mic plugged in. Sorry, guys. It's a specific law called the FACE Act, FACE, and it specifically is about abortion facilities, that you cannot prevent business from being conducted at abortion facilities. The law in and of itself is a completely heinous law. Like, if you read it, I don't know constitutionally you could actually get that to stand up in court, but they just haven't constitutionally challenged this law as of yet. This is kind of the first case in prosecution and criminal charges that is surrounding this law. So it's kind of a brand new conversation. Constitutionally, I don't think this can hold up in court. So I'm just completely disgusted by all of this. We have some lawyers that we know in the chat saying it's not okay. It's a federal law that requires like a 20-foot clear zone in front of abortion clinics. It's specifically about abortion.
So it's specifically on abortion clinics. That's interesting. And this is a federal law. Okay, so my question then is, how do you enforce if 57 months is a sentence for obstructing an abortion clinic within a certain distance, 20 feet, it looks like. How are you going to prosecute, if this is the standard you're setting, blocking, like you saw the people blocking the road to Disney World?
Or
like last week. But no, let me finish. So like if you block the exit to Disney World from traffic and Disney as a private entity is like, yo, or Florida, the state of Florida arrested those people, would they not go to jail for like an extremely longer period of time than that?
No.
I mean, that's absurd. That like, I think the idea that the abortion clinic itself has this type of federal protection behind it is crazy. Like when did this go into place?
I don't remember.
We're going to look up when the FACE Act went into place, but that's insane to me that an abortion clinic as like an institution has that much federal protection that you can't like obstruct business within 25 feet. 1994. So this has been around for a long time. I would be very curious to see if there's anything else that has this sort of like protection around it. Like how do you base federal protection on private entities? Like, is that even, like, I'm sitting here going as like a citizen, how's it even legal?
So you're asking what is a comparable law? There is no comparable law. And that's why I think this is such an interesting case. And personally, I'm devastated by it because it is specifically designed to shut down pro-life activism. That's what it is. It is viewpoint-based discrimination sanctioned by the federal government. It is literally a First Amendment violation.
Yeah.
You would never be able to tell any other interest group you are prohibited federally from protesting at this spot. For God's sake, they painted the road that touches the White House Black Lives Matter. And that same summer, they arrested 2 Students for Life activists for writing in washable sidewalk chalk, Black Preborn Lives Matter. Same week that all of that happened. So this isn't even the first time that the Department of Justice is specifically creating a second tier for pro-lifers. But all at the exact same time, the FBI is calling pro-lifers radical extremists. There is a Department of Homeland Security funded database at the University of Maryland that just put Students for Life of America on the same frickin' terrorist watch list as the Taliban, Hamas, and the KKK. And now you can be any sort of radical leftist activist you want. You can burn down inner cities. You can threaten churches. You can throw bricks through pro-life offices and their windows, which happened, by the way, 2 summers ago, 2022, to my friend who lives in Wisconsin and works for their Right to Life group. You can do whatever you want. And you might get arrested for like 5 seconds, but you're never going to actually be charged with a crime. You certainly won't go to prison.
Is this going to go to the Supreme Court?
I hope that there is a massive barrage of lawyers ready to appeal this sentence. And it needs to go through the court system. It needs to go through the appeals court system, because this prosecution, I guarantee you, and what's really scary, I guarantee you this prosecution is the first of many, many, many to come in the world of pro-life activism. It's not going to stop. Libby, can you maybe not? Sorry. Anyway, you guys all are asking for her name. Please keep her in your prayers. She is an extraordinary young woman, and I just pray that this will be appealed in some very concrete way, shape, or form. I hope that her story inspires other people to continue speaking up and encouraging women to choose life when not many people have the courage to do that. Her name is Lauren Handy, and she is the director of an organization called PAU, the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. All right. You want to have some fun?
Sure, let's have some fun.
Let's have some fun. So the main reason Brock asked to be on the stream today, he asked, I didn't force him, let's make that abundantly clear, is that I posted a video on my Instagram today because it is the month of May, and May, historically, in the realm of Christianity, is a month that we honor Mary, the Mother of God. So I post a video because the other day I interviewed Jordan Peterson's amazing, beautiful wife, Tammy, about her radical conversion to Christianity, her miraculous recovery from cancer. And she said something toward the tail end of our interview that really stuck with me, that Mary is the perfect embodiment of womanhood. That there is no better example of womanhood than Mary, and the more our society tries to erase Mary, the less we have a beautiful image of what femininity, godly femininity, is supposed to look like, specifically embodied in motherhood. And I absolutely loved what she had to say. I had never heard about it that way. It was such a powerful way to articulate kind of what I've been feeling for the last several months. But I've shared with you guys before, I don't know why, but out of nowhere the last year and a half or so, I have seen more overt hatred, dismissiveness, condescension, and just straight up slander about the Virgin Mary on social media than any other subject. Like, I see this at least 3 times a week by like a lot of people who I think are wildly educated, smart activists and commentators and people I really look up to, just saying like crazy, ridiculous things. And I don't know if it's just for the sake of having a hot take. Why you would want to have a hot take against the Mother of God kind of blows my mind. I don't know if it's just to have a hot take or to get clicks or attention or what, but it's really unnerving me. So I posted a video about why I'm sad about that, why we need to continue honoring Mary and look to her as an example of surrender of your life to God and total femininity and basically like the perfect example of what our faith is supposed to look like. And people have lost their minds. So Brock, because he himself just became Catholic and used to, I think, have a lot of the same objections as some of these people, but has expressed a lot of love for the Mother of God lately, wanted to come on the stream and talk about what he thought of that. Do you want to just take it away?
Well, we can. I think we should talk back and forth about it. The first thing I want to address is somebody in your Instagram chat literally just commented that Mary and Jesus were Palestinian. Could not be further from the truth. Clearly, that person has no historical context or reference to anything going on in that area. The area was named like, it would be like the greatest example I can equate it to in the United States for people that don't understand. The word Palestine never existed. It became from the Romans when they took over the area after the Roman Empire took control of basically the entire known world, and they named it like something Palestina. It was like an area. In the United States, it would be like what we call the Rocky Mountains. It is not like an official state. It's like a thing. It's like a territory. It was Judea and Samaria before that, the Kingdom of Israel, all that kind of stuff. So assuming that, Jesus is anything other than God is insane, but to insinuate that Jesus and Mary were Palestinian is nuts.
Also,
crazy.
Can I just say, sorry, we're going to be pulling the microphone back and forth. I also just want to say, as we get started with this conversation, I want this to be back and forth. So drop your guys' thoughts about this in the chat. But I don't really care if you are Catholic or Orthodox or Protestant or atheist. Like, this conversation is for everyone. For whatever reason, I don't know why there are so many denominational disagreements about this, but I hope that we can all kind of come to a landing point at the end of this. This conversation is for all of us. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So for those who don't know, I grew up Protestant my entire life. I grew up in the South of the United States, very much Bible Belt territory-esque. Went to church my whole life. Sunday, Wednesday, every night. Grew up in the church, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, recently, over the last 2 years, I have converted to Catholicism. I think in specifically talking about Mary, that is one of the biggest hang-ups that Protestants have with Catholics. It's always the classic, oh, Catholics worship Mary. Catholics do blah, 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 blah. Catholics blah, 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 blah. The more and more that I've, like, also people don't actually know this when you convert to Catholicism. You have to go through a year-long, like, class course, basically. It's not like you can just walk in the door and say, hey, I want to become a Catholic. Where I actually think it probably the opposite would work going to Protestantism. You can kind of walk in the door and be like, yeah, I accept Jesus. And they'd be like, okay. You have to go through a long discourse. And it's like a lot of teaching. It's a lot of, like, A, historical teachings, but then B, theological teachings that what the church teaches involved in, like, the history of everything and how it came to be. It's great. I suggest anyone, I think you could take it without even wanting to convert to Catholicism. It's fascinating because even if you're an atheist, to deny the history of the Catholic Church is insane. The Catholic Church, like, literally saved the world during the dark times just by harboring the information that they had, and plays such a big part from the Roman Empire down to modern history. Like, to deny the kind of historical importance of the Catholic Church is, you can't. But I have noticed so many people over the last few years talk about Mary in a way that I have just been like, I've had a gripe with. And I think obviously a lot of people got fired up when he posted on Instagram. We're like, Mary's not the mother of God. Mary's just a person. She's dead. Like, all of this kind of dumbass.
I'm sorry. That was not in and of itself. Can I just say, and then I'll let Brock keep talking. You guys, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to laugh. But if you claim to be Christian and you say Mary is not the mother of God, which dozens of people said in my comment section today, I just want you to work out this thought exercise with me on logic, okay? Not theology, not church doctrine, just logic. Is Jesus God? The answer is yes to that. Great. If Jesus is God, was he also human? Yes. We all agree as Christians, and you have to or you don't really believe in the divinity of Jesus, that he was 100% human and 100% divine. Great. So if Jesus is a human, which we all answered yes to, humans need to be born, correct? Yes. The answer to that is yes. So Jesus had a mom. Yes. And if Jesus is God, is Mary the mother of Jesus? Yes, which also would make Mary the mother of God. Why I guess people have such a hard time answering that question is beyond me. I feel like I'm like the SpongeBob meme of holding up Patrick's wallet. It's like, is this your ID? Yes. Is this your credit card? Yes. Is this your wallet? No. That's what I feel like.
Well, yes, that's the perfect example. So here's what I'm going to go, because I'm sure there's people commenting right now. I'm looking for one that says Mary is... Nobody said Mary's not the mother of God. Okay, I'm trying to find that. Because here's the thing. If you deny that Mary is the mother of God, you're denying the deity of Jesus Christ. You are. And for those of you, again, this is where you have to look at not just what you learned in Sunday school at your local church in God knows where, the United States, Western Christianity. You have to look at history. And the original heresy amongst the Christian church, which at the time there was no denominations. It was just the church. There was one Christian church, which was, guess what? The Catholic Church, for anyone who doesn't understand history. Whatever, sorry. Let's point to this.
The universal church.
The original heresy that was brought to the church, where they had to bring a council together and discuss, was the divinity, the divine nature of Jesus Christ. Was Jesus Christ 100% God and 100% man at the same time? Or was he a figurative extension from God and just a man? How did that work? That is a heresy. If you are a Christian and do not believe that Jesus is 100% man and 100% God, sorry to tell you, you're not a Christian. Arianism, great. Perfect. Somebody explained it there. That idea is so... That is the fundamental pillar of Christianity, that the Trinity, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit exist. It is one God in three distinct persons, right? God, the Father, humbled himself to come down in human form in Jesus, to sacrifice himself for us. It is our wrongdoing that separates us from God. So God, in his loving nature, sent his son, which is an extension of himself, down to earth to die and sacrifice himself for our sins. You cannot call yourself a Christian, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, whatever you want to be. This was the first ever thing brought before the church, and it was so dumb that, like, the first 200 years of the church, they were like, this is stupid, let's throw it out. Anybody who doesn't believe the divinity of Jesus Christ, 100% God and 100% man, we're not going to put up with it. We're going to kick you out of the church. That is insane. So, if you cannot say that Mary is the mother of God, you're actively saying that Jesus is not God. And that to me is crazy because, like, even, again, I'm someone who's a convert. I can say, even as a Protestant, I thought that. And if you didn't think that, you're...
So Mary was the mother of God. You thought that.
No, well, I think Jesus was God. If you don't think Jesus... Because I think any Protestant would probably say, yeah, Jesus is God. If you say that, okay, by extension, follow your logic down that train. There's no other path to go except for Mary being the mother of God. And if she's not, you're denying the deity of Jesus Christ. Yeah. Which is like the heresy of heresy. The OG heresy is denying the deity of Jesus Christ. Next point. So we've got the mother of God thing established. Now let's look at Protestantism as a whole. So fast forward the year 300 to the year 1500. How many years later is that? 750, 800, 900 years later? Something like that? Somewhere in there? I'm not great at math, guys. But Protestantism, obviously, for those of you who don't know, Protestantism extends from the separation of the Catholic Church. Martin Luther put his 95 Theses on the door. Obviously, you guys probably know, like, the mega zoomed out version of that story. And then sort of all these different sects of Christianity start popping up all over the world from people breaking away from the church and becoming their own, interpretation of the church. Martin Luther had his gripes with the Catholic Church, brought them up, whatever. This is what I find so fascinating. Anyone who has studied history, again, not theology, history, there's hard evidence. Martin Luther, who at the most fundamental level is the inventor of Protestantism. He is like the Protestant OG, right? He would be like the greatest prophet in the Protestant world if you actually follow Protestantism to what you say you do, because he broke away from the Catholic Church first. Martin Luther did not believe in the idea of, like, intercession and saints and all this kind of stuff, except for in the case of Mary. There is not a bigger defender of Mary than Martin Luther, who is the inventor of Protestantism. Like, it makes fundamentally no sense how you can say, oh, the Catholic Church believes this about Mary, they worship Mary, blah, 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 all the stuff that they don't actually do, but you don't understand anything. But you want to say that Mary's just a person and she's dead, when the person who invented the idea of splitting from the church, who created Protestantism, which is like 95% of Christianity, like sects in America. I where's the quote? Do you have the quote? You have the quote. I'll let you read it.
In 1531, on Christmas Day, Martin Luther said in a sermon, "She is the highest woman," referring to Mary, "and the noblest gem in Christianity after Christ. She is nobility, wisdom, and holiness personified. We can never honor her enough." We can never honor her enough. And I think that just speaks volumes. And honestly, watching all of this, like, insane, unexpected outrage happening in my Instagram comments on a video about the Virgin Mary, like, I got more hate comments today than any of my previous videos of the last month, which surprised me a little bit.
Well, there's a train I want to keep going on, so don't change subjects completely yet.
I was going to change subjects completely.
Don't. Because I want to keep going.
Put a pin in what I was saying.
So, Martin Luther, right, who brought forth Protestantism in, I think the year was like 1510 or 1517, somewhere like that, went so far as to say that anyone who speaks ill will of the Virgin Mary should repent of their sins, and, like, I'm pretty sure this is true. I'd have to look up the exact quote. I know he said that, like, let me pull up my phone actually because I have it right in front of me.
Which one? Oh, yeah.
So Martin Luther wrote in the resolutions to the 95 Theses, which famously put on the doors of the Catholic Church, whatever. He rejects every blasphemy against the Virgin and thinks that one should ask for pardon from any evil said or thought against her. So think about this. Isabel posted a video today talking about Mary, because it's the month of May, and how she should be celebrated. The people who are against the Catholic Church but say they're Christians, that's called Protestantism. That's where you fit into that category. The guy that invented that sect of Christianity says that speaking ill will against Mary is a heresy and holds her in that higher of regard. Like, that to me is insane. So that tells me, as someone who's a former Protestant, and I'm trying to be somewhat like on the same level as a lot of these people, because I used to be one of those people. They're so fundamentally uneducated about the history behind Christianity and the actual substance behind Christianity. Like, this is also the most laughable point, is they'll say, none of that's in the Bible, that's unbiblical, the Catholic Church is anti-biblical. What's so funny to me is, like, A, it's of course it's in the Bible, like, maybe you should read a little bit, but then B, also, guess who canonized the Bible and put the individual books together would have been the church, which would have been the Catholic Church at the time. So it's just like, study history, learn the actual history of Christianity, and if the guy that created Protestantism, which is a lot of the United States, like in a Western modernized Christianity, a lot of the other like segments stem from that. Lutheranism, obviously, Calvinism, all these other kinds of Protestant denominations. The main guy, even John Calvin, held Mary in high regard.
Oh, yeah.
All of the original OG church leaders in like westernized sects of denominations hold Mary as like the second most important person in Christianity under Jesus. Like, that is insane to me that you can be in that sect of Christianity and like deny her as like, or like just say she's like a normal person, she's just like us, she's dead. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And those people, what I'm trying to convey to people is they just don't know. They're not educated on it. They don't look at history. They just want to like revert back to sola scriptura and be like, it's in here, it's in here. Well, it's like, of course it is in there. Maybe you should read it a little bit more. But if you take the theological argument out and you look at logic, history, and reason, all of it points to, oh yeah, that makes sense of why Mary is held in such high regard. But one thing, like, even just like getting this out in the open, like, Catholics don't worship Mary. Any single Catholic on the planet Earth would tell you that. They'd be like, that's ridiculous. Everybody likes to use the word venerate. If you guys just Google the word venerate, it means like well respected. Mm-hmm. Obviously you should hold Mary in high regards and well respected. Like, she is like the OG mom. Like, that's awesome. We should respect her. We should hold her up. She's like a great example of what it means to be a woman. But then, like, yeah, she literally gave birth to the Son of God. So, yeah, like, that's pretty freaking cool. And newsflash, none of us did that. Like, we were not picked to do that. That's pretty cool. That's a big deal. And I hate seeing now, coming over the fence, basically, from Protestantism to Catholicism, even when I was on the Protestantism side of the thing, I would never have said a bad word about Mary, ever. I think I would have said, like, back then, oh, well, you know, we shouldn't worship her, but I don't think I even knew what the Catholic Church was doing about Mary. Like, I was uneducated. Now that I have crossed the fence and, like, done a lot of the research and looked at a lot of things and studied and looked at history and looked at all these church leaders and the early church fathers and what they said, what Jesus said, looked in the Bible, all that sort of stuff, like, again, it's not, nobody's worshiping Mary. Nobody's asking Mary to absolve their sins and like die for them on the cross. Nobody's asking for that. Every single person that's a Catholic on planet Earth, a good Catholic, if somebody tells you differently, then they need to go to confession, would say the only true salvation comes from Jesus Christ. With that being said, there's nothing wrong with holding Mary in high regard. She's a great person. Yeah, she brings, what better person to bring you closer to their son than the mom? Yeah. Like, what a figure she was. And you talk about, you have a great line that I'll let you explain about surrendering to God, which I think is so well said.
Yeah. Well, first I'll just say clearly Brock is very passionate about this, so I don't want any of you to hear his passion as like arrogance or anger about any of this, but he has so much passion for this subject, I think, because he had a lot of those same comments early on, and just having the joy of researching all of this over the last couple of years, I think it's hard for us together to look at so many people like double and triple and quadruple down on really negative, historically unfounded, and just completely illogical viewpoints on a huge aspect of historical Christian faith. And I really like what somebody just said in our locals chat, and I want to share it. Nitty Witty says, this is what happens when you lose your sense of history. You lose your sense of heritage. And sadly, a lot of modern Christians have become so ignorant of a lot of Christian heritage. Not saying that offensively, but because modern Christianity in America, which really has become like an Americanized Christianity, I think, and really a secularized Christianity, isn't teaching church history. We're not teaching the heritage of our faith, the traditions of our faith. And so we're losing a whole lot. And the reason I posted that video today about why I'm sad that we are not including a lot about Mary in modern Christianity is because we're losing our sense of biblical femininity. And we literally in churches can't even answer the question, what is a woman in the United States of America today? Like there are women priests and women pastors all over the country reciting the Sparkle Creed on Sunday instead of following what biblical womanhood is supposed to be like. And I don't say that from a place of arrogance or judgment. I say that from a place of profound sadness, because the reason that is flourishing and the reason that is happening is we are not teaching our heritage. We are not teaching our traditions. We are not teaching the history of our church, because for whatever reason it's been warped into like an anti-biblical thing. How that even makes any sense, I don't even know. So clearly we're both very passionate about this subject, but I wanted to address it with all of the hate comments that we were getting on that post today, because really I am just profoundly heartbroken that we are limiting ourselves in examples of what beautiful faith look like so profoundly by ignoring the examples of the greatest Christians in history, the saints and the Virgin Mary. Like I said in my video, Mary is the best human, fully human, not divine, example of what complete surrender of your life looks like to Christ, down to surrendering your own body to house God. Like that is an epic, awesome, in the literal sense of the word awesome, responsibility that I don't know how many people, I mean, there's only one, could have been equipped for that journey. That is so cool to research and to study and to emulate. And I think it's really sad that we are like taking away from modern culture our opportunity to learn from some of these examples throughout history, because for whatever reason we have more reverence for postmodern pastors in America today than we do the greatest Christians throughout history. We have more reverence for like the founding fathers of this country versus the founding fathers of the church. We have more reverence for our favorite female Christian podcast hosts, who are great people and deserve our respect and are amazing role models, than we do for the Mother of God. And that is really profoundly sad to me. So Nitty Witty, I really love what you had to say, that this is what happens when we lose our sense of history. We lose our sense of heritage. My dad always told me when I was exploring Protestantism for a few years in college and in my young adult years, mostly non-denominational churches, that he hoped I would return to the faith that I was raised in, which is the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church is our heritage, not just our family's heritage, which it is, but it's our heritage as Christians at large. And we are not here to tell you right now, like, every single person has to convert or you're condemned. That is never going to be anything that we say. But I pray and I hope that more people on this issue of Mary, in particular this month, which is historically a month that we honor Mary, throughout all of Christianity, regardless of your denomination, I hope that we all take time to look back at the history of our heritage, of who Christians have been and who the most amazing Christians in society have been throughout the last several generations, throughout the last 2,000 years, to know where we need to be running towards as an example of beautiful faith lived out authentically, rather than trying to fit faith and our heritage into the mold of postmodern culture.
Sure. One thing that I was going to talk about with you that I wanted to see, what a lot of people think about when I mention this is one of the big points for me when I was coming over from Protestantism to Catholicism was having to really break down the idea of what is worship, right? What is the idea of worship? Where are the examples of worship in the Bible? What do they look like? What does Jesus say about worship? What is the idea of worship and how do we do that now? And I thought that was fascinating. And that took like weeks to talk about and break down and research or whatever. And when you look back, especially at the Old Testament is very clear and straightforward what worshiping God looks like. The act of worshiping God in the Old Testament is sacrifice. Mm-hmm. a lot of people will get hung up on the word worship, and they'll be like, oh, you worship this, you worship that. Obviously, you can worship stuff with like your time and worship with your energy, that sort of thing. But the idea of worship stems from sacrifice. Obviously, Abraham and Isaac, huge example, sacrificing your son. We have the examples in Exodus of the Passover and people having to sacrifice a lamb and paint the blood on the doors. When the temple was built, it was taking an animal to the temple, a specific animal with instructions that was clean, to sacrifice as worship for your Lord, to repent of your sins. It was having to do a penance and then take a sacrifice, a worthy sacrifice. Cain and Abel, the story was whose sacrifice was better than the other. That's how that whole thing kicked off. So a lot of people, I think at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, and we can kind of have it back and forth on this, get caught in the modern kind of westernized world of Christianity of prayer and worship being the same. And prayer and worship are not the same thing. And I think that's where people get hung up. Prayer is not worship, and worship is not prayer. They're completely different. Both necessary, both good. Neither, I'm not speaking poorly about either one, so don't take this as like, one is what. They're just different. Not one is more important than the other. Worship is necessary, prayer is necessary. You need both. But they are not the same. They're not the same act, right? Prayer is communication, right? It's necessary communication with our Lord in heaven. Jesus prays. He tells other people to pray. He goes into the Garden of Gethsemane to pray before he's crucified. It was communication. It was, Jesus taught us how to pray with the Lord's Prayer and the Our Father. Like, he lays out prayer very simply. He also lays out worship very simply, telling people, go to the temple, go do this. Like, at no point did sacrifice leave kind of the realm of Christianity. Even when Jesus was alive, there were still people going to the temple until I believe the Romans kind of tore it down and did the whole thing. After it, later. But people were still going to the temple to sacrifice things. Where now, in the New Testament, where we have kind of like this modernized idea of worship, is Jesus being the ultimate sacrifice. So now that our worship has taken place with the sacrifice of Jesus, that's where we get in the Eucharist and communion, and where the idea of a daily or a weekly daily sacrifice of the Lord is the only sufficient sacrifice. I don't want to misspeak here, but Jesus sacrificed himself for us. Therefore, the act of worship comes from Jesus' sacrifice. Therefore, that's why you get him breaking the bread and the wine and saying, unless you eat of my flesh and drink of my blood, in John chapter 6, you will not have life in you. Those who do not eat of my flesh and drink of my blood will not see the kingdom of God. That's pretty well spoken. And I just want people to take a second and really research on your own. This is what I had to do, and this is what I found so fascinating about this sort of Protestant and Catholicism headbutting on certain doctrine, is the idea of worship and prayer. Worship and prayer are not the same thing. And there's a certain way to worship that is laid out, and that is through sacrifice. And the idea of sacrifice now, post Jesus' life, comes from God sacrificing himself for us. That's why we have things like communion. So I find it interesting when people say you worship Mary, and it's kind of you don't even know what worship means. They're two completely different things.
No, it's not that. I think it's that people would disagree on what the definition of worship is, which is an easy thing to misunderstand if you haven't ever learned what the Catholic version or definition of worship is, or the historical definition of worship is, what ancient Judaism's worship actually looked like, and where the institution of the Eucharist is the modern fulfillment of traditional worship of Judaism at the time of Jesus. So I just hope that cleared a couple of things up, because there was just a lot of misinformation flying around in our comment section earlier, and a lot of anger flying around in there. So look, ultimately, there are a whole host of very diverse beliefs inside of multiple different denominations of Christianity that we're throwing around here. This is obviously a massive oversimplification of a lot of things, and we could do a 17-hour live stream and still not be able to unplug all of this. But both of us were just really taken aback by the negativity, the anger, the division that we were seeing in the comments of that video about Mary, which should be the most unifying force for our faith, which is the most unifying force for all of us to rally behind and champion and honor, and really spend time trying to emulate in our very broken postmodern culture. Like, tradition matters. It's something that should be applying to all of us, regardless of what your denomination looks like. And it's a beautiful way for all of us as Christians to learn how to unite in our very divided and broken world. And so I just want to encourage you. I don't know who needs to hear this today, but if you think you know everything about another denomination, like, maybe ask questions instead of just make broad generalizing assumptions. And we're doing the exact same thing. We do that every single day.
If learn more about your own side of things, like the leaders of the Protestant church, like Martin Luther and some others that hold Mary in a very high regard. It's kind of like, we say take the time to do your own research. We really mean that. You cannot just, like, you have to look at historical context. You have to look at what they, like, guess what? Nothing Martin Luther wrote is in the Bible. So, like, please go look at his writings and see what he talked about, because he's a fundamental piece in modern Christianity, and you need to learn what things he said. And a lot of people that are Protestants in America today don't even know how much he loved Mary and venerated Mary.
I love how passionate you are.
I could do a 24-hour stream on this.
Maybe you should get some stream for it. But anyway, point being, there's just a lot of division that we're seeing in Christianity right now. We both feel really called to try to correct some of the misinformation that's out there, but more importantly, unify the church again when we really need it most. I had Gia Chacon on my stream a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about how concerned we are about the division of the Christianity culture at large in the United States of America today, because the enemy is going to do absolutely everything that he can to destroy the foundation of our community in a postmodern, secular, evil world that is governed by sin. There is mass calls all over the world today to eliminate Christianity. Other Christian communities in other parts of the world are facing like actual genocide and complete slaughter because of one characteristic, their faith. And I don't really think the Western world is that far off from that type of existence and that type of persecution. Our persecution looks a little different right now. It mostly looks like posts on social media getting banned, or, you know, maybe you got fired for your job or something, or somebody said something mean to you on your college campus. But the more that persecution continues heating up, the more all of us need to understand our heritage and our history to unify as the global body of Christ together to link arms and fight back against the lies of Satan and against those trying to divide us at every single opportunity. Mary is a beautiful example of what surrender to God for your whole life looks like. She's the perfect example of what womanhood looks like throughout all of human history. And I hope this month that all of you guys can check out the beauty that is her story and learn a little bit more about her along the way. And we're praying for you. And please pray for us in the process. All right, guys, before I let you go, I want to give another shout out to our amazing friends over at Rough Greens, our other sponsor of today's stream. Rough Greens has totally transformed my dog Libby's health. She ran upstairs to take a nap because she's sleeping better thanks to Rough Greens. Rough Greens is not a replacement for your dog's food. It's an added supplement that goes on top of it, kind of like a protein powder. You just take a scoop, pour it on top of their food. It is chock full of antioxidants, minerals, vitamins, etc. that support their bone density, their joint health, their energy levels, their reproductive functions, their immune system, like everything you can possibly imagine. It is all supported by Rough Greens. They are offering you guys a free Jumpstart trial pack. All you have to do is cover the cost of shipping and handling. If you go to roughgreens.com, RUFF go check them out. We absolutely love Rough Greens. All right. Any last words of wisdom to sign us off? You're the one who wanted to be on the stream. Send us away.
I pray that all of you come to love Mary as much as I do. And I think a lot of people, Christian brothers and sisters, need to be more educated. I'm not calling anybody dumb. I'm not calling anybody stupid. You need to be as educated as possible on everything surrounding Christianity. The history of Christianity, the theology of Christianity, the teachings of Christianity, how the early church started, the early church fathers' writings that are all outside of just the Bible you read every Sunday. It's obviously, I'm not trying to diminish the importance of the Bible, but everything is important. And nobody in America today is what I found in traveling the world, going to the Holy Land a bunch, talking with Christians around the world. In America, Christians are very fundamentally uneducated about Christianity. And that, I think that's, imagine how much stronger our faith would be as a country if we were more educated about Christianity. Think about the places Christianity could go if people knew everything about it and were invested in it as we are in, and we laugh, our everyday politics, like that sort of thing. People can recite the founding fathers' documents more than they can Peter, Paul, and the founding church fathers' writings, like that sort of stuff. Like, that's insane. And so, like, I pray that instead of this negative, visceral response to saying, hey, Mary's great, we have a month to celebrate her, that's awesome. Like, hey, guess what? Here in America, we have a month to celebrate transgenders. So maybe we should have a month to celebrate Mary. What's wrong with that? Like, that should be something we all strive for. So thumbs up to Christianity. We should all push harder for it.
Bye, guys. We love you. Back for the stream tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern.